Bowen and Shane Gillis have both lived through the kind of public firestorm that can only happen in the cultural pressure cooker of Saturday Night Live. Years after Gillis' controversial firing from the sketch comedy institution, the two comedians recently revealed that they actually had a private conversation about the fallout. A conversation that has now resurfaced in the public eye as Gillis speaks candidly about being used as a symbol of cancel culture. The latest revelations add yet another layer to a saga that has never really faded from public memory. Gillis firing back in 2019, just days after he was announced as a new cast member, became a defining moment in the ongoing debates over accountability, comedy, and the boundaries of what performers can and cannot say. Now Gillis is putting words to the complicated feelings he has carried since then, and Yang, who went on to become one of the show's breakout stars, has confirmed that the two eventually spoke in person. When Gillis was first introduced as part of SNL's new lineup, the announcement was quickly overshadowed by the surfacing of past podcast clips in which he used racial slurs and disparaging language about Asian communities. The backlash was swift, and NBC moved to cut ties almost immediately, citing values and inclusivity. At the same time, the move sparked a national conversation. Was this accountability, or was it an overreaction? Gillis, for his part, has since continued his career in stand-up, eventually landing a Netflix special and re-establishing himself as a comedian with a devoted following. But the story was always more personal for Yang, who is not only an SNL cast member, but also the first Chinese American to join the show's ensemble. At the time, he was thrust into the narrative without choice, becoming an unspoken figure in the controversy. His silence was interpreted in many ways, though he later hinted at how complex and painful the moment had been. Now years later, Gillis has revealed that he and Yang sat down for a real conversation, one that seemed to lift some of the tension that had lingered. Speaking about the encounter, Gillis admitted that his firing became something larger than him, saying he felt he had been used as an example of cancel culture in action. "It wasn't just about me anymore," he explained. "I was a name, a headline, and people wanted to make a point with me. It stopped being about whether I could grow, or apologize, or do better. It became about what I represented." That framing, being used rather than simply held accountable, is sure to reignite the polarizing debate that surrounded his exit. For critics, Gillis' comments may read as deflection, or an attempt to sidestep responsibility for the remarks that cost him the SNL job. For supporters, however, it confirms what they long argued, that Gillis became a scapegoat in a much bigger cultural war over speech and comedy. Yang's side of the story is equally telling. In recalling their private meeting, Yang described it as cordial and even healing. While he did not dismiss the pain caused by Gillis' remarks, he emphasized that sitting across from him, human to human, shifted the context. "It was important to me that we talked," Yang said. "Not for the cameras, not for the headlines, but because it was something real that happened in both of our lives." That candid acknowledgement underscores the often unseen truth behind public controversies. The individuals caught in the middle are more than their headlines. Yang's willingness to engage with Gillis privately, and Gillis' decision to open up years later, highlight how much growth can happen away from social media's harsh spotlight. Still, the public stage looms large. Gillis' latest remarks land at a time when cancel culture remains one of the most hot-button topics in entertainment. High-profile comedians from Dave Chappelle to Chris Rock have weighed in, often framing comedy as an endangered art under the pressures of political correctness. Gillis' story remains one of the earliest and most enduring examples cited in those discussions. The timing also matters. Gillis has enjoyed something of a comeback in recent years, buoyed by fans who view him as a survivor of cancel culture's excesses. His stand-up has leaned into the controversy, often referencing the incident with a mix of defensiveness and self-deprecation. Now, by opening up about the feeling of being used, he is reshaping the narrative once again, portraying himself not just as a comedian who made mistakes, but as a pawn in a much larger cultural battle. Industry insiders say the stakes of this conversation go beyond Gillis and Yang. "This is about what happens when the internet seizes on a moment," one comedy writer noted. "The story becomes so much bigger than the people involved. And once that happens, there's almost no way to tell the human side without being drowned out by the noise." That's part of what makes Gillis' reflections stand out now. They don't excuse his past language, but they offer a perspective on what it feels like to be at the center of such a storm. And they reveal how someone like Yang, who could have easily chosen to disengage entirely, instead opted to confront the situation directly. The private conversation between the two also challenges assumptions about how individuals handle conflict in the public eye. For many fans, the idea that Gillis and Yang would ever sit down together may seem surprising, if not impossible. Yet the reality proves more complicated. By speaking face-to-face, they created space for nuance, something often missing from viral controversies. Gillis' comments also touch on a broader critique of cancel culture, that it often collapses individuals into symbols. Once someone becomes the example, or the lesson, their personal humanity gets lost. Whether one agrees with Gillis' framing or not, the impact of such labeling is undeniable. Careers are shaped, reputations altered, and relationships strained, sometimes permanently. For Yang, the experience has been different but no less profound. Since Gillis' firing, Yang has grown into one of SNL's standout performers, beloved for his sharp comedic timing and cultural insight. His success has, in many ways, overshadowed the controversy, allowing him to carve his own identity on the show's stage. Yet his willingness to revisit the episode suggests that the personal wounds lingered longer than fans might have realized. In reflecting on the saga, cultural critics point out that both men's careers ultimately survived, albeit on very different paths. Gillis found an audience outside traditional television, while Yang thrived inside it. Their divergent journeys show how moments of controversy can reshape careers in unexpected ways. But the latest twist, Gillis' claim of being used, keeps the debate alive. Is cancel culture truly about silencing voices? Or is it about accountability? Are comedians unfairly targeted? Or are they simply facing the same scrutiny as anyone else with a platform? These questions have no easy answers, and that is perhaps why the Gillis-Yang story resonates so deeply. It embodies the contradictions of our cultural moment. The demand for both accountability and forgiveness, the collision between personal growth and public outrage, and the uneasy balance between comedy and offense. As the dust settles on their renewed revelations, one thing is clear. Bowen Yang and Shane Gillis may forever be linked in the public imagination, but behind the headlines,